thank you for joining our webinar, Understanding the Reserve Bank of India Framework on IT Governance. My name is Liam Ryan, and I'll be your host for today. We do have quite a packed agenda for you today. So first off, we will take a look at the key components of the Reserve Bank of India Framework. You'll note throughout the presentation today, we have shortened that to simply RBI, but please do note that whenever we mention RBI, it is the Reserve Bank of India. Next, we will take a look at using the framework to improve operational resilience and security. We'll then follow that with implementing the RBI framework in an enterprise architecture tool, and then we'll move on to integrating the RBI framework with other standards that you might already be using, and we'll be using TOGAF as an example for that. Finally, we'll finish with about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of today's presentation. As a brief introduction, my name is Liam Ryan, and I've been at Avolution for 8 years now. My main role is in aiding and delivering operational excellence and value for Avolution, our partners, and our clients. I'm joined today by two wonderful speakers. The first, Vinay Raju from InnoviEA. He has 23 years of industry experience. He's founder and chief enterprise architect of InnoviEA, an author of an open group publication, and is also CISSP certified and a cybersecurity architect. I'm also joined by our software consultant, Ryan Zhu. Ryan's been with Avolution for 3 years now. He is a TOGAF, ITIL, and ADOS certified architect and has worked with many clients across APAC, from Australia to Mongolia, the Philippines to India, and many countries in between, and recently created the Architecture Maturity Assessment Model for prospects and clients that we've been working with. So I'll give you a brief introduction to Avolution. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to our community. You're in very good hands here, I'd like to say. We have been in the EA space for 22 years now, and we'd like to say we're leading that through our technology and innovation that we've brought to the market over the past 22 years. We were originally a spin-off from the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia, and we now have a global footprint with offices in Singapore, London, Virginia, South America, and the Middle East, as well as staff working remotely all around the world. We're a leader in the Gartner MQ and Forrester Wave, and we've been rated #1 by a whole host of independent tool review bodies around the world. We do have thousands of Abacus users logging in every day to work on their digital transformation, IT governance, and security projects, and we have clients in over 100 different countries around the world. One of the key standouts that you'll notice with Abacus, and of course, one of the things that makes it possible for us to incorporate the RBI framework in our tool so easily, is we have support for an unlimited number of frameworks and notations, including some of the more popular ones, such as TOGAF, Archimate, BPMN, ACORD, and BIAN as well. I'll also give you a brief introduction to InnoviEA, our partner. So InnoviEA are a professional services partner with Avolution, and they've been supporting customers across India and the Middle East. They are a Silver Plus member in the Open Group and contribute to various forums, being very active in the community at large. They've also authored a publication on the Open Group, and we'd be happy to provide you with a link to that if you would be interested after today's presentation. InnoviEA provides services in enterprise architecture consulting, cybersecurity consulting, cloud consulting, and also support all the use cases in Abacus as well. They're, of course, extremely well resourced and have senior, experienced, and licensed enterprise architects who are Abacus certified, TOGAF certified, and highly sought after as cybersecurity professionals. I'll now pass on to our first speaker, Vinay, to take us through the key components of the RBI framework.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you so much for such a great start. Good morning, all. My name is Vinay Rajure. So I'll be taking you through the RBI framework and how the regulated entities can make use of this RBI framework to increase the cybersecurity and resiliency of their infrastructure. So let's start over by looking at what are the key components of RBI framework. RBI has introduced or launched a document with the name of Master Direction on Information Technology, Governance, Risk Controls, and Assurance Practices on 7th of November 2023. And its applicability is from April 2024. Now, if we bifurcate this document, it has got 6 chapters in it, starting with preliminary chapter, which talks about the applicability. It's basically which all regulated entities it is applicable to. So we have a dedicated slide on that. We'll go into the details of that after this slide. The second chapter talks about IT governance. So which primarily covers the IT governance framework. There are different roles and committees that this document suggests, which includes what is the role of board of directors, what the IT strategy committee, what are the senior management and IT steering committee will do, and what are the functions of the head IT. So we will look into it little detail as we move on to the further slides. So the third section or third chapter is rather one of the biggest chapters is on IT infrastructure and services governance. So this includes various areas of ITSM, that is IT services management, project management, change and patch management, different controls in cybersecurity such as cryptographic controls, and even it also includes the physical and environmental controls, access controls, and so on. And the fourth chapter covers the information technology and information security risk management. So this is dedicated to the risk management, which actually covers how the RE should do the periodic assessment and review of the IT related risks. What are the different sort of security and cyber security and information security policies which should be there? It also talks about risk assessment, vulnerability, and penetration testing. And it also includes how the RE should take care of the cyber incident response and recovery management. And the next two chapters are dedicated to, the fifth one is dedicated to the business continuity plan and disaster recovery, which includes policy and how the disaster recovery management should be done. And the last chapter is totally dedicated on information systems audit. So this 6 chapters put together is a comprehensive information and quite a detailed and in-depth information that RBI has covered in this document. Now, the regulated entities are supposed to follow these guidelines and look at the implementation. Now, we talked about the applicability. So this is actually applicable to the various entities in the BFSI segments, that including the commercial banks, including the foreign banks as well, the non-banking financial companies, as well as it covers, it is applicable to the credit information companies and all India financial institutions. That includes NABARD, NHB, SIDBI, and so on. With exceptions, rather exclusions to the local area banks and core investment NBFC companies. So as such, its applicability is very wide. Eventually it means that there'll be many players which needs to look at implementing these guidelines. We go to the next slide and see in detail how the regulated entities can use this framework to improve the operational resilience and security. If we look at the sections again in detail in terms of what section is actually used in terms of the improving the security and resilience. So starting with the first section, that's chapter 2 of IT governance, which actually can be used to implementing a robust IT governance framework. So that ensures a strategic alignment with risk management, resource management, and performance management. Now, these are all geared towards maintaining resilience and security operations. In addition to that, what it also emphasizes on an active involvement of board of directors and IT steering committee in overseeing and approving IT strategies, so that it can ensure the resilience and security are the priority considerations for the regulated entities. The next chapter covers quite in detail on the IT infrastructure services management. Now, the key components, starting with the ITSM itself, it helps to build a solid IT service management framework. Now, having a solid IT services management framework supports information systems and infrastructure, which ensure operational resilience. Now, the service level management processes ensures that IT operations are managed effectively, which is very critical for maintaining cybersecurity as well. It also has emphasis on how the third-party arrangements are taken care. So the proper vendor risk assessment processes and controls help mitigate risks associated with outsourcing and third-party engagements. Now, which is crucial for both operational resilience as well as security. Then it also talks about the capacity management. So capacity management ensures an adequate capacity of IT resources. So it helps in preventing overloads, and also in it could be any performance bottleneck. So which is essential for ensuring that there are no security gaps over there. Now, project management is a very essential component in any IT infrastructure. Now that ensures the adequate capacity and IT resources, as well as ensuring the delivery of the projects in terms of the right timelines or in terms of the right projects. That also adds up to the resiliency and security. Now, the ITSM also covers the change and patch management, which is a very essential part in any ITSM implementation. So with the regular updates and patches, the regulated entities can ensure that all the systems are secured with the known vulnerabilities. And it's a continuous and ongoing process. So there is a wonderful guideline on how the RAs can actually implement those guidelines to ensure that all the vulnerabilities are patched and addressed on time. The fourth chapter, that is the IT and IS risk management, it actually emphasizes on a periodic review of IT related risks. So regular risk assessments allows the regulated entities to stay ahead of emerging threats. With risk assessment, the REs can ensure that their risk management policies are current and they are also robust. It also emphasizes on the risk management framework. So establishing a comprehensive IT and information security risk management framework is essential for security, as well as it also covers the incident response and recovery management. It is very important that how REs actually address the incidents and whether there is a plan in place, because incidents are due to happen. It always happens. It's an always ongoing process. But what is essential is that how these incidences are managed with a well-defined incident response and recovery plan. So that is what is covered in the risk management. And there are many other points which are covered in detail in the document. Now let's look at the business continuity and disaster management. Now in this section, the BCP and DR policies that adopt best practices, which ensures the regulated entities can continue the operations. So in addition to the incident response, certain incidences which could be cyber or physical in nature can actually have disruptions to the business. So having an adequate and a proper tested BCP and DR policy ensures that it maintains the resilience and security of the IT infrastructure. It also talks about how the regular DR drills or testing the backup and how to quickly restore the operations after a given incidents, which is a key part of security posture, maintaining the security posture. And the last section, which is the information systems audit, which is all about conducting a regular information system audit that allows the regulated entities to verify the effectiveness of their IT and cybersecurity controls, and which is very essential to see where do they stand, because the postures keeps on changing, the threats and attacks keeps on evolving. So it actually helps ensuring that the operational practices are both resilient and secure. So essentially, by closely adhering to RBI's framework, regulated entities can fortify their operational process against disruption and security threats, which essentially ensures the continuity of the service and helps safeguarding the sensitive information. So this is how all the regulated entities can actually benefit by using this. Now we have seen what are the essential components, and then we saw how it can actually help to build the resilience. Now let us look at how can we implement it, because having guidelines is absolutely wonderful. But then the question comes that how would we implement it? So that is where Abacus actually helps us in implementing this particular RBI framework with the Abacus Enterprise tool. Now, first, let us look at why and how an EA modeling approach helps here. The EA modeling approach, the framework that we're talking about, basically, which is built between InnoviEA and Evolution's experts of banking domain as well as the governance and cybersecurity domain. So we have put the RBI directives or the controls as capabilities. So in a EA language, it is enterprise architecture language, it is called as capabilities. Now these capabilities are broken down. So these capabilities are controls. There are approximately close to 150 controls that we have, which are broken down into people, process, policy, and technology. So this PPPT approach covers, so there are different roles that this document, this guidelines talks about are covered in people. What processes needs to be introduced or needs to be followed is covered in the process section. And then what sort of documentation and policies are required to ensure that that particular control is implemented. And there is also a ready guideline in terms of what are the technology elements, if essential, in the given control that can be adopted by the REs. Now, this entire framework not only help you as a ready reckoner to implement it, but you can also use it for tracking the compliance. So you can create compliance profiles and also generate status reports, because this is not a one-time activity. So every now and then when the change happens, when every year when the new audit results come in, we need to ensure that we are compliant. So it is essential that it should be a cyclic process. So this tool will also help you to create those compliance profiles, and which can also help to send the reports and track the report to the management. So with this, I will hand it over to Ryan, who is also expert and having a great experience in implementation of this tool, to talk about how the REs can benefit by adopting this framework. So over to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Vinay, for this very brilliant introduction. And also, I had the honor to actually implement this one in Abacus 2 site. Although the great, enormous work was initially done by Vinay, just breaking down of the controls into those actionable points. And by the implementation stage, I do see how it naturally can live with EA2 better than any other paper-based reporting methods you may naturally think of. So here are some typical benefits of adopting governance control framework inside the EA tool. So RBI in particular live with the EA tool like Abacus very naturally. To start with, so you can have one single repository of data. So as Vinay was explaining, for each and every single of the controls, you actually have to break down into process, technology, etc. And so, for example, as banking organization, you may start to adopt some of the process of the industry, such as buy-in or PCF, like process classification framework. And all those existing processes are very naturally helping you in adopting the RBI framework. So instead of starting from scratch, if you have such data existing in your repository already, they can be directly used for modeling your RBI compliance. And let alone, say, in technology, data point, all these are existing assets in your repository that's directly contributing to the modeling and compliance of RBI. And the second benefit is enterprise-wide engagement and collaboration. So because as Vinay was explaining, there were over 500 controls. All these controls actually need assistance from different departments to actually help on the compliance. So we need a mechanism of involving all the enterprise-wide users to come into the same platform and start to modeling compliance and update compliance over time, show the proof why it's compliant. And we can track the activities of users over time to see the overall progress. So Abacus naturally serves as this enterprise-wide engagement platform, and we will see that very shortly in demonstration. And the third benefit is actually when we talk about compliance, you do need to have sort of scoring algorithm just to show objective way if you are in compliance and how do you actually improve, which are the areas for improvement, etc. So such algorithm can be automated and also customized inside Abacus Enterprise. So the different representatives from your different departments can contribute to their ideas into this algorithm. So over time, this algorithm will be like a democratization of your organizational wisdom. And it also helps keep the consistency of assessment. So you have a very robust and reliable way of assess your RBI compliance status. And last but not least, when we talk about improvement, roadmap is definitely one of the key topics. How do we actually model our current state? How do we project into the future? How do we conduct the gap analysis? How do we use the generic road mapping techniques to actually help us measure our improvement in a very reliable way? And I think that's quite enough of the talking, and it's good time we actually move on to the demonstration inside Abacus, so you see in action how RBI framework can be implemented. So to start with, just a quick introduction of the Abacus toolset. We have two parts of the tool. One of them is called Abacus Enterprise. That's the currently one you are seeing at this moment. As you see, it's a browser-based application. And in here, it's a dashboard-based reporting tool. And in here, you can have a limited number of dashboards, and each can be used for certain functions. They can be tailored for different stakeholders. They can be used by different departments. And you can see from the topics, it can be for different functionalities as well. And the other part of the tool is what we call Abacus Studio. We will see that briefly after, but that's basically the backbone of the tool. That's where the modeling was happening, where you create the artifacts, where you configure the algorithms, where you run the analysis, where you manage users, etc. So these two parts work very closely. And this is the platform of enterprise-wide collaboration. And in here, I have a few dashboards just to illustrate the implementation of RBI framework. So to start with is our RBI framework implementation methodology. So first, as we were explaining, we actually modeled the RBI framework as capabilities. We modeled the directives as capabilities. So originally, it was just a documentation from RBI. So first, work was needed to actually turn this kind of just like a directives in sentences into something users can more easily understand. So that's the first step. VNA was taking enormous effort. Basically, VNA was able to translate all those directives into this short form yet very concise capabilities. And some of the capabilities actually overlap with some existing ones in control frameworks, such as NIST, Corbett, or BIAN. So that's why we keep saying also those existing frameworks can be well integrated with RBI framework, so you don't need to reinvent the view. And then after we model our directives as capabilities, we can use the enterprise architecture way of showing the capabilities. So to start with, as you see, we already have this heat map effect. By the scoring algorithm, okay, we can easily see which aspects of these capabilities we actually are doing great, which ones we do need to improve on. So in this way, it's providing us high-level overview of how we are doing each of the aspects. So it's giving us the foundation to actually drill down for further development. And in terms of the breaking down of the controls, we actually, first we have our chapters, then the next level capabilities, then the last level actionable controls. And the controls are further broken down into applicable endpoints. So for example, one single control, how do we validate we have such control in place? We first need to have the technology to support such control, like applications or technology platform. Then we need to have a process in place to make sure people have the way to follow what's the workflow to follow to implement that control. Then we also have the policy and documentations to show what's the criteria, when was the last checkpoint, etc. Just make a formalized way so user have a place to actually show the record of compliance. Last but not least, for every single control, there will be actors. How do we actually assign the work to each of our stakeholders, like our actors, or we can assign to the roles. So these are pertaining to the people aspects of architecture. So that's the breakdown in the visualization. So in terms of the breakdown, in the tabular view, you basically see, okay, we have the hierarchy path breaking down into, okay, what is this chapter? And each chapter will be capabilities. So for example, let's just look at the chapter 2 as example. Once I applied the filter here, you can see it's basically narrowing down just to the chapter 2 controls. And for each of the controls, we will have the original description from the directive. And in here is actually the individual breaking downs of people, process, policy, and technology, the PPPT. And these were actually the intellectual properties from Vinay by his rich experience in the industry on what are the technology needed, or what is the process needed in place, what policy and document you need to produce. And Vinay already have the template and solution for those. So I only did the honor to actually upload them into Abacus. So once you adopt a framework from us, you basically have all these actionable endpoints out of box. So you don't need to rethink how do you actually map all those controls into those actionable endpoints. And then by very generic EA modeling process, we can give our metrics, like what is the implementation score, what is the implementation difficulty, what is the implementation benefit, etc. All these properties can actually based on some assessment and algorithm your stakeholders participate in. We shall see that very soon. So that's the basic implementation method in Abacus. Then the next thing is really how do you build a compliance profile? And we have an example dashboard for that. So looking at the very familiar this heat map effect capability framework, we also can translate that into some percentage of compliance. And again, these are not subjectively assessed. This is just based on the number of compliance out of the total compliance in there. So we see a moving, a rolling number like how we are doing in any of these areas. And so for each of the dashboards, all these individual portlets, if I go to the edit mode, you can see you can actually resize and drag it to any place. And basically these are freely editable, and this was built from the artifacts you build inside Abacus Studio. So for each of the portlets, it's having its purpose. We have the landscape view as capability, the property portlets to show the KPIs. We have a bubble chart view, basically putting all the compliance controls into the quadrant view of implementation difficulty and implementation benefit. So in this way, we can clearly see which ones probably need our prioritization. So for example, if I just click on this bubble, because its implementation difficulty is quite low, yet benefit is high. So once I click on that, you see my dashboard is basically filtered together with it. And I can clearly see from below which control is that. So I just need to make sure, okay, since risk-based approach is something we need to prioritize, I can search for that. And in my owner view, you basically see, okay, who is the owner for each of the applicable endpoints. And I may just send this filtered dashboard to Jake and say, okay, Jake, for this one, it's supposed to be compliant. Since we can't get great benefit just from adoption of that, could you please make sure the technology will be in place to support such control? So see, that's how the facilitation of using the dashboard can help with the enterprise-wide collaboration. And we also have other tools to facilitate the visualization. So for example, if I'm just responsible for chapter 4, I can just click on the tree view. So you see the other visualization is filtered together with it. So in this way, any user can come in and just filter to the information of their concern. And you see only 3 points will be left out of that 500. So I can more easily focus on the work I'm tasked with. And similarly for this graph view, I can use the same trick just to see, okay, what are the controls out there and what are the things to be done, or what is the compliance status, who is the owner. And you can imagine I can expand on every node and to see what is actually needed. But since this is too massive to work with, you can also use the same filter effect. So for example, I want to say I only want to look at the controls that's having the implementation difficulty less than 3, yet the implementation benefit over 8 as my starting point. So in this way, I can only see 2 of them is left. So now instead of looking at the whole list of the control list, this graph view is also filtered out for me. Okay, this is actually the control you need to prioritize to boost your score in a very efficient way. So here is the brief introduction on the compliance status. Then the next way we mentioned about the benefit is really how do you actually map for the road mapping and algorithms. I think first we can talk about the roadmap first. And for roadmap is basically how you conduct the gap analysis and how do you close that gap in a very reliable way. So you see, by EA modeling, we basically can have a current state and a future state. So these are basically some scenario-based future state analysis. So in the future state architecture, our technology may change, our process may change, people of the task ownership may change, compliance may change. So with all these changes automatically captured inside the tool, we will have a future state compliance profile. And the color effect, again, is automated by the system. And now we can put the current state and the future state side by side. And just to see where are the areas needing our attention for the improvement. So for example, this one is clearly getting improved because the like a orangish color, meaning it's probably having a score of 2. By the light green to yellow, it means probably is somewhere around 3. So we see there's improvement, but how do we actually close the gap? Then we can use different mechanisms. So first what we can do is just close on the drill down just to see, okay, under each of the controls, what are the actionable, under each of the capability, what are the actionable controls? We clearly see an improvement in the control of incorporate IT risk assessment. We definitely can drill down again just to see the next level implementation. So in here we see, okay, in the previous scenario, we have 2 non-compliance, but just due to the change in technology and adoption of policy, basically now 1 point is getting the status of compliant, and the other is improving to partially compliant. So this is the way we see very clearly how our score is improving. So by the same mechanism, we don't need to drill down. We can basically just click on any area of our interest, like just click on one of the boxes. And okay, we first can basically go to our chapters by filter and drill down. So for example, I come in here, and in here I click on my control for the next level. And then now it's specifying for me which control is basically that. How do I see from the compliance status? And if I'm the owner for this one, I can come in here and say, okay, basically this is already compliant instead of non-compliant just by my by the adoption of the IT governance process. So now the compliance status is updated, and so does my data point, and the algorithm will automatically update the score accordingly. So now since we are talking about the algorithm behind, it's definitely worth our attention to look at the exact algorithm actually behind the scene. So this is the other part of the tool, which we call the Abacus Studio. So you can see here, we have a lot of modeling basics, like what are the viewpoints built, what are the architectures, meta models, etc. We won't spend time discuss about the details, but you can imagine this is where the construction of the data and viewpoints happened. So what I'm introducing here is the algorithm, which can be used by everyone. This is what we call the no-code algorithm inside Abacus. So instead of using scripting, any user familiar with the data structure can actually come in here and model a algorithm like in this way. So yeah, this is no code. We just drag and drop the boxes onto our calculation flow. So in here, we can also read the information to see what people are doing very easily. So you can see we are basically getting all of our RBI controls, and we are getting the RBI control scores on the control level. Then we attribute that to the parent of RBI capability on average. So our capability can have an average score. And the last step is we probably just want to set a property of the RBI score for capability. You see here is a quick demonstration. I can just simply drag and drop a calculation block and select what property I want to set the information. And after that, I can basically run my algorithm. And you'll see below are the step-by-step calculation result. You can see because I use a 0 to 4 scale, so all these controls will be eventually attributed up to the capabilities, and the capability score will in this way be an aggregation of average of all the children controls. So that's one part of the algorithm about no-code algorithm. And again, if you are familiar with programming language, you will also find Abacus quite powerful in accommodating your needs in customizing your calculation. So for example, in here, you'll see I basically give a scoring effect of compliance, partially compliance, or non-compliance by a score of like 4 and 2 and 0. So you see in this way, even for a programmer who also want to adopt other very sophisticated calculation and automation into the tool, you have the flexibility to do that. And that's really what's separating Abacus apart from other paper-based or any other part like a business intelligence tools. It's really giving you the ability to automate and customize your algorithms by yourself. And we also can do you a favor to help you with building your algorithms by our professional services. And that's pretty much about the adoption methodology of RBI inside Abacus. Let me quickly pass back to you, Vinay, to talk about the integration with other standards because you are expert in the other frameworks in the industry.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much for such a great demo. So with that, I'm sure viewers now would have actually seen it in action that, starting from we understood what is the framework is all about, how it can be benefited, and now we have actually seen how it is implemented or it can be implemented. So what you have seen, what Ryan showed is the thing that you will get along with the tool, and then you can actually start using it as is. Let's say if you want to customize it, so Abacus is very highly customizable, wherein you can actually add your own different type of processes, different type of elements, technologies, however you want to use it, you can actually customize it. And we in InnoviEA can help you along with Evolution to build any custom architectures if required based on this particular framework. So now what we have seen so far is what is readily available. Now, usually any regulated entities might already have an existing framework in place. Now, that could be a TOGAF, that could be COBIT, it could be NIST, or it could be maybe in some cases it could be BIAN that they're using. Now, what is important is that how this particular the RBI framework that is there in Abacus can actually talk to this, because if it is working in isolation, probably that won't help. So what we have also done is that we have connections to your existing enterprise architecture implementation as well, which is based on TOGAF. So the Abacus tool in itself not only help you with the RBI framework implementation, but it also will help you with TOGAF implementation. Now, another point that I would like to specifically call out and mention here is that this particular RBI guideline document that we're referring to also talks about implementing an enterprise architecture framework. So probably this is the first time it is actually mentioned in such a document. So this is basically a dual benefit of using Abacus. You can use it for TOGAF implementation, wherein you will also get the RBI framework implementation along with it. So in a nutshell, you can use the Abacus to vertically implement this framework with TOGAF, and as well as you can use it for integration horizontally with COBIT or NIST. So both of these frameworks are also available. And as I mentioned earlier, it is highly customizable, so we can actually create any additional connections as required. So this is this one additional point we wanted to highlight along with the implementation. So as we go into more advanced use cases, so you want to use it independently, standalone, you can use it. You won't have a vertical or horizontal integration. We can do both. Yeah. So over to you, Ryan.
Yep. Thank you, Vinay. So again, let's have a demonstration inside Abacus on such integration. And so in here, we use the example of TOGAF because for COBIT or for NIST, it will be horizontal. Basically, the control mechanism is additive to whatever control you already have. So you don't need to reinvent some of the existing controls, but rather just adding additional ones. That's what I mean by horizontal. So for vertical integration, it's basically now we are treating the RBI controls and the capability as like a layer inside the architecture. This can be an individual layer, or it can be dwelling under the business architecture of TOGAF. Either way should work. So here we have the example of modeling that just as a business layer inside TOGAF. So you see basically for process, role, data entity, and technology service are the existing TOGAF domains. If you are adopting TOGAF, you already have such data already in place. So by just adding RBI control, the actionable PPPT basically exists in your TOGAF meta model already. So your work is only left to create the mapping between the RBI controls and your existing PPPTs. And if those PPPTs specified in RBI control don't exist, you just add them in to help create the profile. So that's what we mean by the vertical implementation of integration. And also, if you are familiar with the TOGAF ADM, basically for each of the architecture phases, we specify actually open group specify what are the viewpoints and artifacts that's needed to be created under that phase. So we Evolution already help construct that inside our Abacus toolset already. So we actually don't want you to have more work to do, but instead we want to see what are the artifacts already inside TOGAF that can be readily used to help your implementation of RBI. So if we look at the viewpoints of the ADM in this tabular view, I'm basically highlighting some of the example artifacts that's still stipulated by TOGAF in the ADM phases, but that's also closely relevant to the RBI adoption. So to start with, in the preliminary phase, you will have principal catalogs. Similarly, for your RBI directives, you will have principles on how do you actually prioritize the adoption of RBI controls, etc. And then for stakeholder catalog, of course, because now you have additional controls, you will have additional stakeholders to actually participate in the RBI framework. That's why this catalog can be readily used. And similarly for business architecture, you will have capability business capability map, which we already showed. It's a view for the business capability map just of RBI. So that's something already existing in TOGAF, which you can use for RBI. And here we will also look at the one example, like for example, the process application rationalization diagram. So before the adoption of RBI framework, this can just simply be a flowchart with all the processes with just the application and technology realizing them. So that's a view suggested by TOGAF, which a TOGAF customer will have such view in place. But since we are now adopting RBI, how we can add the RBI control to actually to this existing artifact already. So because RBI is talking about service level management, so if I search for service level, I should refer the table again. Service level or SM. Yep, as you see, there is actually a control of service level management process. So that's why for this artifact, it's already directly related to that just by adding some kind of like architecture modeling techniques. So for example, before you adopt the RBI, you only care for the realization from application to processes. But now since we care for the service level agreement, we can just add in the service level data. So for example, mean time to recovery is something we use to calculate for reliability and availability. But now it can be also like an equivalent of service level agreement, like whether it's a 4-hour SLA or whether it's an 8-hour SLA. Then with this result, inside the architecture, we are actually able to calculate the local availability of the application. And for example, if such critical process inside the process flow is relying on these two applications, and since it's actually a very critical process, for example, like order fulfillment, it's probably one of the most critical one. Our management want us to, or RBI is stipulating, okay, you need to actually have over 99% of availability. That's actually something we can calculate it by the existing supporting applications. You see, because both of the applications need to be up in order for this service to be running. So that's why we can use the availability of each to calculate the availability of this process. We can clearly see we need some improvement. So we can tell the owner of this application, okay, now we actually need SLA of 4 hours instead of 8. And hopefully this will actually boosting the availability and making our compliance to the RBI control. So yeah, just a quick summary, basically. You can vertically integrate that with the existing architecture domains. And for the existing artifacts in your architecture, they can be very naturally linked to the RBI controls. And we just need to tweak it a little bit just to show how it's actually in compliance with all the RBI controls in the framework. And that's all from the demonstration. I think we can do a quick summary here. Passing back to you, Liam.
Thank you, Vinay, and thank you, Ryan. That was a very informative session and really appreciate your insights there on the Reserve Bank of India framework, TOGAF, and of course in Abacus as well, and being able to bring all of those things together to make them work really efficiently. So to everyone that's been listening into the webinar, hopefully you've had a lot of value from today, and we want to just highlight a couple of the key benefits of using the Reserve Bank of India framework with Abacus. As you can see here on the screen, we've gone through how you can ensure secure and efficient IT system operations. You can protect against cybersecurity threats and improve your risk management. You can align IT operations with business objectives and, of course, regulatory requirements because they're growing more and more as we're seeing more pressures put on businesses around the world. And of course, you can facilitate the early adoption of EA by implementing modeling in key EA domains as well. You can also consider the other enterprise priorities in the technology advancements by looking at things through a enterprise architectural lens, and of course, considering the RBI controls as well, which Ryan demonstrated just before. And then, of course, finally, by using the RBI framework with Abacus, you will achieve alignment with the Reserve Bank of India direction in this area as well. So lots of great benefits there that can be achieved. So thank you again to everyone who has listened in today. Okay, so first question that we've got here, do all the financial institutions need to use the RBI framework? Vinay, that's probably one that's best for you to answer, I think.
Yeah, thanks for that. We talked about the applicability slide. So those are the if that entity falls under any of those categories, yes, it is applicable to them as well. So what we would recommend is that we can send you the link of the document, as well as you can refer, as well as if you can connect us on one-to-one basis, we can actually also use our experience and tell you that about the applicability. So without actually knowing the name, it would be very difficult to mention about where it is applicable. But at large, it is the area of coverage is very high, except for the exclusions that we seen in terms of the local area banks and as certain core NBFCs. Otherwise, it is applicable to the rest of the entities as mentioned earlier. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think we've certainly answered that one. Thank you, Vinay. So second question here that we received earlier, can I integrate the framework in my existing IT structure without making many changes? Ryan, I might pass that one to you.
Yep, and hope by the end of the presentation, that question is already answered, but just let me reemphasize. So basically, RBI control is a list, RBI framework is a list of controls which are applicable on those endpoints you already have inside your architecture. So basically, that's the same way we model any capabilities. So for your existing IT infrastructure, you also have capabilities linking to the technologies, the people, the process. It's exactly the same way we model for the RBI. So that's not competing, it's additive, it's not conflicting, it's complementing. Basically, whatever you have, if that's already something still stipulated by RBI, you don't need to do anything extra, but you are already in compliance. For the additive ones, you just use the same modeling way to add them to your repository. So you don't change the meta model at all. The maximum to say is slight variation of customization, but the rationale behind it is the same. So minimum work is required other than building the compliance profile.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll have to assume it does. I'm not sure who they came from, but yeah, I think that does certainly answer the question there. One more we've got here, which I'm otherwise hoping to answer some of the audience questions if they get sent in. But one final question we had here prior to today's session, is this framework compatible with other EA frameworks? And maybe Vinay will start with you on that one, and then Ryan, we can pass to you after that.
Yeah, sure. So I think yeah, with the demo and the entire session, I hope that question is also answered. But yes, it is very much compatible. Rather, it is tightly integrated, right? So these frameworks are already so Abacus has been doing it over 2 decades. Primarily the enterprise architecture framework implementation, and rather the RBI framework is a new addition to that. So the answer is a big yes. Yes, it can be integrated with the other enterprise architecture framework.
Yep, well said. And from an implementation perspective, yes, since we have implementation experience with a lot of other kind of like a governance or control framework such as NIST or Corbett, the way of integration is quite similar. That is good. So you will only need minimum effort, whichever framework you want to integrate with. And we definitely will provide hands-on assistance if you choose to adopt that inside Abacus. And the reason we can have this webinar so quickly is also because of the reason for this methodology. It's already quite mature in the practice. And for the TOGAF integration, for the Corbett integration in the example, because we have TOGAF and Corbett inside Abacus already. So all those existing frameworks, if you are adopting somewhere outside any EA tool, we can also help you like import them into Abacus quite easily and using that as the foundation to create mapping to the RBI framework. So yeah, that's why we definitely highly recommend you to think about the possibility to actually adopting your frameworks in a single platform such as Abacus.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Ryan. Very comprehensive answer there. So hopefully that's certainly answered that question. I will just mention, as you can see on screen, we do have an Enterprise Architecture Summit coming up later this year. It is probably one of the standout events for the EA community on an annual basis. So we've been running this since, I believe, 2020, and it's been growing every year. I think last year we had something like 2,000 attendees. So it's a massive event and highly recommend attending it. There will be something for everybody and in every time zone as well. So do please register for that event. It should be available on our website, and we'll be sending out invites to everyone today as well in the near future. We'll just move to the final slide, and I'll say a quick thank you. Of course, first to Vinay and Ryan, brilliant presentation. Thank you so much for your inputs there and putting this together. It has been a wonderful session, and I hope everyone today has gotten a lot of value out of it. So thank you very much. And of course, thank you to our audience and everyone watching this webinar via the recording later on as well. You're the reason we're doing these sessions, and hopefully you've been able to take something away from it today. If you do have any other questions or you're interested in the framework itself, please reach out to Vinay, Ryan, or myself. We'll be more than happy to chat with you one-on-one anytime in the future. But thank you so much for attending today, and I think we will close there.